You're listening to Cooper Talk.
Welcome to Cooper Talk. I'm your host, Steve Cooper, and remember, I'm only as hip as my guests. I got to tell you something, people. I'm very excited to have this gentleman on my show today. I'm not only a big fan of the band he was one of the founders of, Devo, but he also has a new song out called I'm Going to Pay You Back with a really cool video. And I found out that he has also been directed commercials and videos, so I want to talk about that process because that just intrigues me because I know TV commercial directors in LA who love it, and it's a hard gig to get, and my guest is Jerry Casale. How you doing, Jerry?
How you doing?
Good. I want to tell me about the new song. I want to hear about what it's about, and the video. The video is just cool. I mean, you know, in this day and age, I mean, I'm 57, so I'm an MTV kid. And MTV teen, and I love videos. And now videos looks very more technological than most. Tell me about the song, and then tell me about the video.
Yeah, well, what I did here, because as a creative artist that did found Devo and did co-write the songs and did direct the videos, I get tired of being put on ice and not having Devo be active, so I had to, on my own, continue the spirit of what actually started Devo. And that was that we were a multimedia collaboration and an experimental art group. That's what we were. We weren't people that thought we were going to have a record deal on a label. We thought we were going to make short films driven by songs that we wrote that would have a narrative that when you put them all together, you'd kind of be like the Three Stooges of rock and roll. And, but, deeper. only ostensibly foolish, but actually quite smart messaging underneath it all. So recently I was so frustrated, and I got this call from a friend of mine who's, runs the Raymond Scott Foundation, and he knew this guy from Real Gone Records who was trying to find me because they wanted to put out a piece of vinyl for Record Store Day that reissued my 2005 release of my satirical alter ego project called Jihad Jerry and the Evildoers. The album was called Mine Is Not a Holy War. It was a war on stupidity, as futile as the war on drugs. Anyway, they go, do you have anything new? And I said, well, I had a couple unreleased tracks from that time, but I'd be more than happy to record a new song, but I'd have to do a video with it. And they went, oh, wow, okay. So it spurred me on to do what I'd been wanting to do for quite some time, and I'd been working with and talking to that friend of mine who I worked with on the video. His name is Davey Force, great artist in his own right, and a brilliant CGI guy. And he had been experimenting with AI programs and deep learning. And I kept telling him this look I wanted. And he goes, well, it sounds a little like those stills on TikTok or early Andy Warhol photo screens. And I said, yeah, but it's got to be something that tracks at 30 seconds, 30 frames per second. That's a whole different thing. And so he put his thinking cap on and worked his butt off, and we found a way to do it. So I came in with the idea and the song, and we worked together and produced it and directed it together, all in his little studio. And I really love the result, because I was going for a slightly Marvel Comics cartoon world that was nevertheless connected to adult live action, but would be in its own dimension. So Jihad Jerry could be timeless and have more adventures in the future, where it's like getting the next edition of a comic book. And I think we accomplished that. That's what I'm happy with. I think when you see the video with the song, it brings the song to life as a true piece of music video art should. The song alone just can't cut it the way it does when you watch it together.
Now, explain to me, because I'm not that bright, the 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, then the bullet. Explain that because, and I love that you do it twice, and then you have the little, I mean, it's just, it's cool, but I was sitting there going, are they Bitcoins? What? I couldn't figure it out. What? Explain that to me.
Yeah, they are Bitcoin. They're a parody of Bitcoins, yeah. They're JJ coins, Jihad Jerry coins.
Well, you know, it's funny. As I was reading about you, the background you had written, I'm guessing was you for Jihad Jerry, the backstory. Yeah. How did you come up with that? Because that's like something out of a sitcom. I mean, that could be a TV show, right. That whole character. When did you decide to do that, and how long did it take you to formulate it?
I first wrote that up in 2004 as a response to my utter horror and disbelief at what, Bush was doing with the ginned up Iraq war and the fake evidence of, elements of mass destruction, right? And using Colin Powell and people with credibility to sell it at the UN. And you could see the whole thing was just a conspiracy plot hatched by Cheney and his pals because this is what they wanted to do. And it was the complete wrong thing to do. Like, if you want to energize and militarize and piss off the Muslim world and get the most whacked militant jihadists on your ass, you found the way to do it. And they did it. And then they acted surprised when we got retaliated on. So I wrote that then, and I knew that Jihad Jerry would be, quote, misunderstood, not get the love. Although I thought that more people would understand the satire. They're looking at a 60-year-old man in a stupid, white man, in a stupid Sam the Sham turban, looks like Sam the Sham in a Pharaoh's. I didn't think anybody would take it seriously, but of course, we live in those times where sense of humor has been trodden underfoot, and certainly fundamentalists of any flavor, whether it's Muslim fundamentalists, Christian fundamentalists, Jewish fundamentalists, they're not known for their sense of humor. So I did get my share of death threats and attacks, and Jihad went dormant really fast. Nobody got it. Jihad didn't get the love.
That must be, it must be hard as a performer, because I have a background in performing too, and I used to do stand-up comedy in the late 80s and early 90s. And when you go up and you really craft a bit and it goes and it just falls flat, you just get pissed. You start feeling like you're losing yourself on stage. Like you feel like, even though it's not, reality's not escaping, you are. What was it like when you took all this time to do this character? Did you ever just want to say, it's a joke? What came from your mind when you were just sitting there getting frustrated?
I was shocked that people didn't get it, right? And especially the things that Jihad wrote and the lyrics and the songs. I don't know what to say. There was the name check song, What's in a Name, done almost like a 70s funk in a blaxploitation movie or something. Something that what's his name? The famous black guy that wrote the song for Shaft.
Richard Roundtree? No, he was Shaft.
Anyway, it was inspired by his music. And I thought, okay, people will certainly on this one, they'll get it. That Jihad's telling the story about when he was just a little boy. And they didn't. And I got the death threats, and I got my, radio turned its back on me. I had a big interview at Sirius XM in New York when that came out. And the guy actually liked several songs on the record. He most liked the lead track that was called Now Is the Time. And he goes, man, I would play the hell out of this if this was a Devo track. But I can't. I can't say Jihad Jerry and the Evildoers. I'll get my ass hung. I can't do that. I'm not playing this shit. And he goes, it's too bad, because for some odd reason, it sounds like Devo. And I'm like, well, you're looking at Devo, pal. How could I do anything else other than what I've always done? Like, it was Mark and I that wrote all the songs. But it was just, that signaled me that I was dead out of the gate, that it was an uphill battle not worth fighting.
Well, Devo was so innovative, and you've been innovative. How did this all start? What kind of kid were you? Were you were you a precocious kid? Were you a really smart kid? What were you like as a kid?
Oh, I was a well-behaved, polite kid that had authoritarian blue-collar parents that put the fear of God into me, and school was everything, so I made sure I got A's and B's, and I was forced to go to Catholic school. And, obviously what happens there is that it's inevitable that when you grow up with that type of repression and that type of being told what to do and not to question authority, you know that as soon as you start getting your teenage hormones, you're going to question authority. And boy, did I. And I was an avid reader. So I was taking it upon myself at 13 and 14 and 15 to read things like, Animal Farm and, Huxley. And I remember getting caught with the D.H. Lawrence book,
Lawrence of Arabia?
About Temple Gordon, the girl who gets raped by Popeye, is one of his most famous books. And that, practically got sent to a reform school for that one. I had to go and sit with the priests and nuns and my parents, and everybody's crying. I had a month worth of penances. That's, let's just put it this way. By the time I was 16, I was looking for a way out of the house.
Now you went to Kent State, right?
Yeah.
Now, what did you major? I mean, when you went into college, like me, when I went to college, I come from a WASPy family, so the same thing. You go in business management because you don't really know what you're going to do at 18. I didn't know. I was like, I'm not sure. So what's easy? Well, my dad was in business. What was your major? What were you aiming to do?
Well, luckily, there were two teachers I had in high school that took an interest in my fate. They knew this kid shouldn't be going to Vietnam and he should go to college. And they knew my parents were unable to help me there and, in fact, antagonistic towards those kind of people that went to college. And they said, you really excel at writing. We're gonna make sure you apply to several colleges here and take the SATs. And they helped me through that process, and I got accepted. But the only place I could afford was Kent State University. I got accepted there too. But anything else was out of state, and I wasn't getting enough of a scholarship to cover it. So I got a work-study scholarship at Kent State as a journalist. So my major became 20th century comparative literature. So I was going to get a BA. And in my sophomore year, after a couple acid trips and keeping notebooks and drawings, I decided I was going to be an artist like Andy Warhol. So I added studio art as a major. So I had a double major, 16-hour course loads every quarter, busting my ass, burning the candle at both ends, and, set out to graduate with a BA and a BFA. And then Kent State, May 4th, 1970 happened in my senior year.
How did that affect you? Because I knew you knew two of the people.
Yeah, I sure did. Jeffrey Miller and Allison Krauss, both from out of state, from upstate New York, actually. And all bets were off after that. I was probably a nervous breakdown and then PSTD. I mean, when you see people shot at close range with M1 rifles with military full metal jacket bullets, and you see what the exit wounds look like, you change. I mean, until then, maybe I was a live and let live groovy teenage hippie, but it was no more Mr. Nice Guy after that.
So, how does Devo end up coming about through all of this?
Well, I lost my scholarship to graduate school because I was a member of SDS, and the Governor Rhodes made a pact with several other governors that all this protest had been caused by out-of-state agitators. And so if you belonged to a militant group or an anti-war group, you weren't allowed to go away to another university in another state. So I was disinvited to Ann Arbor University, had to go back to Kent State with my tail between my legs. And that turned out to be a very fortuitous event because that year then, starting in the fall of 1970, there was a program that had already been put in place before all the horror went down, where they were bringing in visiting professors from like King's College in England, Berkeley in California, Columbia in New York. These were the coolest people. And of course, me and my artsy academic friends, which, you know, you gravitated towards one another because you were the fringe group at a university that was otherwise pumping out MBAs. We hung with these people, and they turned out to be the people that had already taken the red pill, the people that could give us more references and rationalizations and explanations for what we were thinking and trying to articulate. And when I say we, it was, I had a couple close friends. One was a poet, one was a studio artist, but we were all like thinkers. Every night we'd gather, smoke pot, talk, philosophically argue, discourse. It was all a part of creating ideas, like what are we going to write about next? What are we going to draw next? What are we going to do next? And so I met these people like Ed Dorn from the Black Mountain College School of Poetry, who was friends with Ginsberg. And I've met Eric Mottram from King's College in England, and he had published books and been friends with people like Jeff Nuttall that created post-bomb culture. You know, a lot of lefties, as we would have been called. A lot of, and he knew, God, what's wrong with me? I'm getting senile here. The French social scientist, man of letters, philosopher that everybody took to be a commie. He wasn't a commie, but he started putting out books then. And anyway, it all gelled. And what we'd been talking about, we had called Deevolution, my friend Bob Lewis and I. And these people, these professors just laughed. They found us so humorous. They found us so clever and strident and silly. And so they kind of egged us on. Like, oh, you want to talk about de-evolution? Okay, well, here, read this, you know. So there we were. And that's when I met Mark Mothersbaugh. And I was playing bass in a blues band, and he was playing keyboards in a progressive rock band. And he was a guy that was drawing a lot of doodles and portraits and very transgressive stuff. And he had seen some of my art in a show. I was 2 years older than him. He had seen it in a graduate art show. And so we sought each other out. And I said, well, what would Devo music sound like? We're doing this Devo art. What would Devo music sound like? So we started trying to, you know, find proof of concept, right? Gain of function. Like, let's make Devo music, and if it sounds like other music, it isn't Devo music. So if it sounds like a progression you've heard on the radio or a genre that you're already playing, throw it out. It's over. Stop me. So I agreed to quit playing blues licks. He agreed to quit playing prog rock licks, and we started stripping it down, tabla rasa. And we'd have to explain to each other, why are we adding that sound? Why are we going to this chord change? Are we going to a chord change because you think you should? Let's not. And so we were making minimal, crude music, but using, the Mini Moog, the ARP, Odyssey, electronic drums, my crude Gibson bass. I mean, we were just we were experimenting. That's what we were doing.
Do you think it helped you? Because as you said, you weren't doing it to become rock stars. You were doing it, for the visual art. Do you think that helped you as a band in getting the sound where you didn't have to worry where it's like, oh, wait a second, this will never sell? I mean, did that help you just being so creative and original?
Yeah, because that conversation never came up about selling. It just wouldn't even have occurred to us, right? And we knew that no self-respecting rock and roll guitar player would have anything to do with us. That's why we enlisted our brothers, because our brothers understood us, having grown up with us, and it was a shorthand. And they were willing to play strange patterns and whacked out sounds on their guitars. They were willing to do it. And so we couldn't have done it without this Three Musketeers effort of, everybody being there together, collaborating for a single vision. And that single vision had nothing to do with trying to get a label.
Now, what was it like the early gigs? Because the music's different. Were you always wearing the outfits? Was that from the get-go, or did you start in the beginning when you would play a gig going up in street clothes?
Well, it started with I found some firemen's jumpsuits they would wear when they were in the firehouse, and they were just working, like they were their work suits. And they were very cheap in this industrial catalog. So we started by wearing the firemen's work suits with clear plastic masks. Those really creepy, cheap masks that were around in the 70s that just had some eyebrows and some lips, and it was clear plastic, so it was your face, right? Very creepy. Something you'd rob a bank with. And that's how we went out. And, of course, we got booed and laughed at, beer cans thrown at us, all the things you would expect. Screamed off the stage, threatened off the stage.
What made you keep doing it? I mean, a lot of people, if they get shunned, like I remember me when I did comedy, the first time I did great. The second time, I ate it. I mean, I had no laughs. And I came back like 3 months later, and I said, well, I got to do this. But what made you guys keep going?
Well, that negative response really got us off. Because we hated where we lived, and we hated the bullying culture, and we hated these people that were screaming at us and throwing beer cans at us. We thought, this is great. Look at that. We pissed them off. Ha, ha, ha. Then we'd figure out how to do it better next time.
Now, how did the record contract come about? Was it through Bowie? Did you meet Bowie somewhere, or how did this all start?
Well, Bowie certainly was helpful, but not in the end. Not really. I mean, he did give us validity, and his imprimatur got higher level people interested in us. But it was all through the sweat of our own brow. I mean, we were in basements and garages for 1974, 75, 76. Then in 77, I thought we were really good at that point. I thought what we had come up with, we were really good at doing. And by that point in 77, of course, we were all aware of the punk movement coming out of England and aware of the punk scene in New York. So I drove to CBGB's with my girlfriend on her spring break. She was an art teacher for elementary school. And I pretended to be Devo's manager, and I had our self-produced single on Boogie Boy Records. And I had the little movie we had made, The Truth About Deevolution. And I had all this, marketing copy I had written. pretending it was from other people, like quotes from other people. You know, it was a complete DIY con job. And I went to CBGB's and I talked Illy Crystal into giving us a date there. And then having that under my belt, I went over to Max's saying, well, CBGB's is playing us in April. You know, what about you? And of course, they didn't want to be left out. And then I went to Alan Betrock because I had seen that there was a paper called the New York Rocker that was a free alternative music paper that was distributed all around New York and all around, you know, downtown New York and where Max's is and Washington Square. And I showed him everything, and he flipped. He loved it, and he wrote it up. So by the time we went back to New York, we packed the house.
Now, what did people get in that show? Did you get a different crowd? It wasn't the people you hated. Now you're in a scene where there's a hustling. It's a different movie. It's a different music scene. How did you do in those New York City shows?
Yeah, because you got your outcast punk hipster crowd, and we were aggressive enough. The music was, you know, aggressive and strident and angry enough that it kind of tangentially fit in with their orthodox music. You know, orthodox punk was like these three chords, this way, you sing like this, you wear these ripped jeans, you have the safety pins, you know, here's what you do. And of course, that isn't what Devo was doing. But musically and sound-wise, we had enough power and dissonance that they lost it over songs like Mongoloid and Uncontrollable Urge, you know, and Gut Feeling. And so we were accepted. You know, it's like, we accept you, one of us. So, and then we took a trip out to the West Coast because Kip Cohen of A&M Records, you know, had heard the native drums and the smoke signals from New York and said, oh, I better check this out. And he paid us $2,000 to drive out to L.A. and showcase at the Starwood, which was a club that was like a second-rate whiskey a go-go, you know. But once you hit it at the Starwood, you'd play the whiskey. And he promptly turned his back on us. He saw 4 songs and said, fuck this. He goes, you know, I got burned with the Tubes. I got burned with the Tubes 3 years ago, and I'm not getting burned again. So, but there we were, right? And the punk crowd, which was all reading a magazine called Slash, put out by Steve Samioff, they were spreading the word. So club owners asked us back. So I refused to go back to Akron when the band wanted to and talked everybody into hanging out and fighting it out. And it just, it snowballed quickly. And that's when Tony Basil and Dean Stockwell and Neil Young came forward and sanctioned the band. They loved us. And Tony had worked with David Bowie, and she brought along Iggy Pop. And Iggy had been touring with David on the Idiot tour. David was playing keyboards for him. So David heard the tapes, saw the first music video, and flipped out. Sent us to his lawyer, Stan Diamond, to try to make a deal. But the deal he offered was very bad. And so I knew enough about deals at that point that we pushed back and said, well, we love David Bowie, he's our hero, but the deal's got to be like this. So we spent that fall negotiating a deal with Warner Brothers Records, where Bowie would produce and would come out on Warner Brothers. And that's what was going to happen. But he kept pushing it, kept delaying it because of all his projects and being so busy with film And I got really antsy because I thought we were missing the zeitgeist. Because, I mean, Blondie had released, you know, the Ramones had released, the Talking Heads had released, the Sex Pistols had released. It just looked like we were now going to look like we were not in on the beginning of this, that we were, you know, imitators, right? And Bowie said, okay, I understand that. He goes, you guys fly to New York and you meet Brian Eno. He's ready to go. I think Brian can do this for you. He'll do it at the same studio with the same engineer I was going to use in Germany. And so we flew there in December and we met Brian, and Mark and I really liked him, and we had, of course, liked everything he did. And we said, okay, because he was ready to go. So beginning of February, we flew to Cologne, Germany, and then drove an hour and a half out into the countryside to some little godforsaken town in the winter called Neunkirchen. And Connie Plank was there. His studio had been built in a barn. And we did the record there in 3 weeks. Now,
who decided, when you released Satisfaction, who decided on that song?
Well, him as a part of a spontaneous jam. We hadn't intended to cover Satisfaction. It was just all this fantastic experimentation where my brother started playing a figure. And, you know, I laughed. I went, oh, that's great. Sounds like Chinese rock and roll. And then Alan Myers started going, boom, to it, which was backwards. It sounded ridiculous. Like it's putting the accent on the one. And I go, I don't know. Now that sounds like robot reggae. And I started playing and it fitted in between his beats. And then Mark started going over on synth. And we're all laughing. And we're all like, keep that up. Speed it up. And Mark started singing Painted Black over that. And my brother stopped playing and stopped everybody. He said, no, that doesn't sound right. Sing Satisfaction. So we started it back up. Mark started singing Satisfaction. I added a change so that it could be more like Satisfaction. And that's how that happened.
Now, you mentioned earlier, you know, they had seen your first video. You were so before the trend with videos. Was that just because you always wanted to make videos? I mean, did you start from the very early days making videos for all your songs?
That was the idea. Like I told you at the beginning of this, that was the whole idea. That was an idea I had with my good friend who was a filmmaker, Chuck Statler, who we ended up working with. And of course, Mark was on board for that. He totally agreed. This was the idea. And, you know, we were never at a loss for ideas. We were at a loss for resources and opportunities. So we saved up some money. The first thing we could do was the 10-minute film that you saw. The Truth About Deevolution, where you saw an early version of Jocko Homo and Secret Agent Man.
Now, what happens when you all of a sudden start getting recognized? Like, people are knowing you, you're getting bigger. What's going through your mind for a stage show now? Because you have the fans and you guys are creative. What was your aspects when you would go on the road in the beginning when you started getting the newfound fame?
Well, it was exciting because, once again, ideas were piled this high, none of which we'd ever had the opportunity or the means to do. Now, we had the means to do some of them. And we already had a stage show, but now we could add production and control the lights and the colors of the lights and the look of the stage, all the things we couldn't do before. And so it was exciting because we were sitting on so many ideas. It was like, okay, which of these can we do cheaply?
Now, the video Whip It becomes a huge hit. How did that video come about? Because that was in the early days of MTV, I believe.
I'm sorry, which video come about?
Whip It.
Oh. Well, that was all the way into 1980. We had already done, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We'd already done 6 videos before Whip It. So, Whip It was the first time that we did a video after the fact. I didn't have a concept for Whip It when we recorded it. And nobody at the record company thought that was ever going to be a single. They weren't interested in it. And what happened was, while we were touring clubs, Cal Rudman down in Florida, who was a big regional DJ, back in the time when DJs had a lot of power and a lot of autonomy, he had the Cal Rudman report that everybody in the Southwest read, and the Southeast. And, of course, he had been given the record by Warner Brothers and told that Girl You Want, and he didn't like Girl You Want. So he listened to the record like, here's a DJ with ears who actually listened to the records. And he decided Whip It was the shit, as they say. So he started on his own, with no payola, no coke, no whores. He started playing it. And it took off. And so Warner's, we had a 2-week break where we were going to play some more clubs on the West Coast. And Warner said, you got to make a video. Like, now they were converted from Devo's, what do you want to make videos? That's stupid, right? Now it's like, you got to make a video. And MTV was only in 3 cities at that point. So we made the video, and the reason I made that video, and the reason we did that idea, was that all the DJs were making dirty comments on the air about it being about S&M or beating off, right? Like we'd come in and they go, "Hey, Devo, whip it." So I thought, okay, we'll make a video that just gives them exactly what they want, takes it too far. So Mark whips the clothes off of a woman in the while the Cowboys cheer in the corral and the band plays in the corral. And that all came from a men's magazine from 1965, because my friends and I used to collect these really terrible, cheesy nudist mags, men's mags that were really bad. I think this one was called Dude. And it had a feature, like each of them had a feature, right? This featured a man who was a stunt man in Hollywood who had quit the business and moved to Arizona and bought a stable and raised horses. And his wife had been a stripper. And 3 times a week at noon in the corral, for all the people that came to visit the Dude Ranch, he'd whip his wife's clothes off. He'd whip her clothes off down to a bikini. And it was a 3-page spread that showed all this, right? Well, that was that. That was in a magazine I had, collected from a secondhand store. It's like, let's do this, right? And everybody goes, yeah, let's do that.
Well, it is one of those videos, and everyone remembers it. I remember, as I said, being in college in the 80s. Where did you come up with the hats? Because at every costume party I went to in college, someone would always try to dress up like Devo. And they'd always have, it'd be like the crappiest looking. Like they'd have cardboard. It just didn't look right. It looked like a layered cake. It looked more like a wedding cake. Who came up with the hat idea?
I'll show you. Hold on.
Oh, wow.
This is a milk glass lighting fixture that hung in my elementary school. The elementary school was built in the 30s. It was all Art Deco. This hung from a ceiling with 3 chains with a light inside it. I used to stare at it because I hated being there. I hated the nuns and the priests. And I used to love this form. So way later on in my life, when we're getting ready to do Freedom of Choice record, I thought of flipping it over, taking off the last tier, so there's only 4 tiers, so it's the scale of a human head, and making vacuum form versions of it, so it's very light plastic, and we could wear them. That's it.
That's amazing, because it is such a item in pop culture. Everybody knows the Devo Hat.
Right.
Now, as you're getting bigger, and MTV is bigger, and you're getting your videos played, as you said, as MTV started getting bigger, and they are playing videos, they all never had a ton of videos. How are your lives changing? Because now it's got to be, you're always on the go. Where the record companies want you to get that next album out, were they trying to push you in the road, or how is your guys' life changing?
Yeah, there was that sweet spot where suddenly, we had to rebook everything we were playing at because it was too small. Now, because of Whip It and MTV, we're not playing 400 and 500 seaters. Now we're playing 3,000 to 5,000 seaters. And I can buy some nice clothes, and I can get into a lot of restaurants because everybody recognizes us. And so there was that sweet spot for about a year where we were heroes, where the music video vision we had starting in 1973 paid off. And then, of course, what happens? MTV does not become this harbinger of distribution for a new art form. It just ties its playlist to the top 40 national radio playlist, and videos become a factory of just promotional throwaway baby pictures for the record company. It doesn't matter how cliched and silly they are. It matters where the song is charting. So you watch a song that was a hit on the radio with a terrible video 20 times a day on MTV. And suddenly Devo wasn't getting played on MTV because, hey Devo, look, I don't see you here. See this 40, see this list? You're not here.
In some of the videos, once you directed Whip It, right?
Yeah.
Now with the videos after that, like, Beautiful World and Through Being Cool, did you direct them, or what was your guy? Okay, now what was were you concept, or was it like a movie's done with it? Were you the writer and director, or was it an input from different people and then you directed it and brought the vision across?
The ideas either came from me or Mark and me. We sat down and we hashed out everything. And of course, I was more like the writer, director. He's the actor. He's the main actor. He's going to sell it. And he would come up with a lot of great detail ideas that bring it to life. He was always good at that.
Now, it's obvious that you love directing him because you went on to direct other acts. What made you decide to go that way? Because it's something that, now you're going, it's your vision, but before you're like the Spielberg, it's your whole vision and everything. And now it's someone else's vision. What did you bring to the table, and how would you approach some of these artists that you said, like the Cars? How did you approach the Cars to direct their video?
Well, they approached me. I think a lot of bands were afraid to do videos back then. They didn't get it. They thought if you're a real rock and roll band, you're not going to make these videos. They thought it was wanky, But But then they realized, that they had to, that this is something that was happening. The manager is pressuring them, the label pressuring them. And I think they chose me because they thought, okay, he's been on both sides of the camera. He's not going to fuck around with us. We can trust him. And frankly, with music videos, the way you got a job from the beginning as a director was to write the concept. You would compete with 6 other directors, write a 10-page treatment, and you'd either get chosen or not. So you are coming up with a video idea for the song.
Now, how did you, I know you directed something for Rush and some other bands that weren't per se the genre Devo was in, and the experience you had of directing. How did you approach those videos? Did you sit there and say, okay, I have to do something completely different? Or how would you get your view across to them when it's sort of, you're in a different area now?
Well, sure. You're problem solving. Your secondary creativity. That's what I call it. It's like, it's not like Devo when Mark and I sat down and wrote a song and had an idea of the film all within like 15 minutes, right? Where you're bringing something to life that didn't exist. Like Jimi Hendrix, he writes Purple Haze. Was he trying to solve a problem? No. Did anybody think they would ever even like Purple Haze? No. He made people like something and want something they didn't even know 6 months earlier that they'd ever tolerate. That was Devo, too. This was not like that. This is, you're using your craft and your knowledge and your creativity to solve somebody else's problem. And you're trying to do something for them that fits them the way I did something for myself and Devo that fit us. So, of course, you're not going to put Devo on them. And so, yes, I wasn't trying to make a Devo video ever.
Now, how'd you parlay over into the commercials?
Well, finally, people in the commercial world started taking video directors seriously. And I'd been around a long time directing music videos at that point. And so I got an opportunity with 3 national Miller Lite spots.
Which ones were they?
They were the one involving the contest, the fake contest for the cheerleaders being sent to the Super Bowl. And this was all Kenny, a friend of Dick's. And Dick and Kenny were like normal guys that weren't ad guys. And so they were determining the commercials. That was the joke, of course. The ad agencies created these, everyman schmucks who were supposedly responsible for what you were about to see. and they were ridiculous. They were dada. They were incredible. They were. It was like Kelly the farm girl, and so Kelly the farm girl had her own song. Bow wow wow Miller Lite, squeaky squeak Miller Lite, it's really good, right? And she had farm animals around her that were all animatronic, doing the squeaks and the barks and when they're supposed to. And so the whole thing is a fake set, like a really idealized 1950s Technicolor barn set with a backdrop of the Midwest and blue sky, the hay bales. They knew I could do this stuff.
How did they parallel? When you think about it, because music videos, as you said, they're completely with commercials. You're working a lot of times with trained actors. I mean, because actors know there's a lot of good money in a commercial. How did they parallel doing both for you?
Well, when you were working with a good agency, it's fun. Because good creative then, is exciting. And it doesn't feel like work. Because casting is fun, shooting is fun, editing is fun. But that was the exception. Most of these things were, derivative and tired and very uptight. Even if an agency came on hip, in the end, the idea you signed on to do isn't the idea you get to do. And the clients were always distrustful of the agency. And they're always there on set. And they're always second-guessing you and stopping you from what you want to do. So it was very stressful. Very stressful.
Well, when it comes to videos, as you said, you have the latest one for your new song, and you've directed so many. How has the video making changed for you? Do you find it easier now because things are digital, or did you like the old way you did it?
I liked both. I mean, you're right about it being easier now. You're right about you got many more arrows in your quiver, more tools in the shed, and things don't cost as much. There's a lot of stuff you can do with really rudiment. I mean, people shoot old videos on their iPhones, right, on their iPhone 12s, and it doesn't suffer. It looks cool. You could never do that in the beginning. It was a much bigger deal. The means of production were in the hands of a few. Equipment rentals were expensive. But what it did make you do is really think everything out. You couldn't be jived. You had to think everything out and commit to it, and you couldn't make mistakes because mistakes were going to cost a lot of money. So what you would see is very, very thoughtful, worked out ideas, where everything now is just like off the cuff and slop. Like, here, we can try this, we can do this, and then we can just put it all together like a chopped salad. It's like there's not as big of a commitment to a concept.
Now, do you see more videos in your future? Are you writing? Are you going to keep coming out? Because this video is great, and it's fun. I mean, it's a cool video, and so the ideas are there. Are you still going to keep putting out content?
Oh yeah, I mean, I hope to. I have a lot more songs for Jihad Jerry now than I'm going to pay you back. I have a lot more where that came from. And in fact, I've been talking with Josh Freese and with Davey Force about the next one, which is the next one I want to record is called The Invisible Man. And I sure hope I get to do it soon. And wait till you see when the Invisible Man reveals himself.
Now,
surprise!
What's the future of Devo?
That's a good question. I mean, Devo could be doing so much, and Devo gets offered such lucrative concert offers over and over and over. But Mark is always the guy that's not interested. So it's frustrating and sad.
Well, it is. But your music is great, and we're glad that you're around, and we're glad we can listen to Devo. And one more question. Your love, I heard you're a vintner. When did your love of wine come?
Real early on, but my opportunity to make wine only came in 2012. So I'm putting out my 9th vintage of Pinot Noir right now. The brand is called the 50 by 50. You can see it all at the 50by50.com, all letters. I put out Pinot Noir, I make a rosé, and I started making a white wine. And it's all from a single vineyard in the Sonoma Coast, because I think that's where the Pinot Noir grape grows best in California. I think it makes the best wines there. And it's a small, I only produced like 420 cases last year. It's a brand waiting to be discovered. Anybody who tastes it knows it's serious wine. It's real. It's not rot gut. It tastes great. And it's just a matter of creating demand and getting it out there.
Well, that's awesome, people. So go check that website out. Also, go check out his website, Gerald V. Casale. And I want to thank you so much for coming on. I've been a big Devo fan all my whole life. So, people, go check out Jerry's work. Go Jihad Jerry. Check that out. Go to my website, coopertalk.net. You can find 890 episodes. Email me, Cooper at coopertalk.net. Twitter, I'm at CooperTalk. Remember, I'm Steve Cooper. I'm only as hip as my guests. Don't forget, drink your water, eat your vegetables, take your vitamins, and I'll talk to you guys next time.